The quarterback battle is over, the pads are off, and game week is almost here. Today, we've got our final Top 5 Friday of the offseason, and I'm counting down the 5 players who made the biggest moves during preseason camp. That's coming right up.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018. Now I'm a producer at Fox Sports and have been covering the Irish for the past 5 years. And I am pumped to have you here with me on Friday, August 22nd. So happy Friday, everybody. And thanks as always for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Before we dive in, I wanted to remind you to please subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow wherever you get your podcasts. That way, you can stay up to date with our daily coverage of Notre Dame football all season long. And the best part, it's 100% free. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Folks, we are just 9 days away from Notre Dame's season opener against the Miami Hurricanes, and it is so close, I can almost taste it, which makes today the last episode of the real offseason because next week we're going to be in game mode, and I feel like the best way to wrap it up is one last Top 5 Friday until next offseason. So we're going out with a bang. All offseason, we've been doing these Top 5 Fridays, usually like every other Friday, and I'd rank anything. Top 5 best games, Top 5 spring practice storylines, all kinds of stuff. But today, I'm going to break down the 5 players who made the biggest moves during preseason camp. Position battles have been won and lost, and some players just flat out rose to the occasion these past few weeks. And for each guy, I'm going to explain how they made their move and why it matters heading into the season. I'm also going to throw in a few honorable mentions at the end who deserve some love for the way that they performed, but we're going to save that for segment 3. But before we get to the list, I do have 2 quick thoughts to kick off the show. First off, the SEC moved to a 9-game conference schedule, and this has been something that has been debated for years, right? Honestly, decades, and this generated a pretty big reaction because of it. And even though the SEC is going to be required to play one extra conference game, they are required to play an additional non-conference opponent every single year from the Big Ten, ACC, Big 12, or Notre Dame. And Notre Dame already has future games scheduled versus SEC opponents like Texas in 2028 and 2029, Alabama in 29 and 2030, and then in Florida in 2031 and 2032. It's still so crazy to me that we schedule these games so far in advance, but I feel confident that those games are going to be protected now, even though the SEC is expanding conference play. I think maybe there's a case that in 2029, when Notre Dame is supposed to play Texas and Alabama that same season, maybe it just moves to one of them. But again, we'll figure that out at a later date. The main thing here is that a potential move like this was said to hurt Notre Dame's independence. That's been the fear for a long time. But that mandate that these schools have to play one extra power conference opponent in the non-conference schedule, that makes independence secure. Notre Dame should have no problem scheduling SEC opponents in the future as long as that mandate is in place. And now teams like Indiana, and specifically Indiana's head coach, Curt Cignetti, he looks a little bit foolish for scheduling as many cupcake games as possible and then blaming the SEC. But Cignetti is a coward, so I guess that's what we should expect out of him. But that was big news, and I feel like in terms of Notre Dame's independence, everything is good there. We also got some news about Notre Dame's new logo. Notre Dame revealed a new football-specific version of the iconic Leprechaun. You can see it right now if you're watching along on YouTube. Looks very similar to the old logo. The only difference is instead of putting up your fist like he's going to fight someone, he's holding the football. And also, I respect the ball security here because as we know, ball security is job security. Looks like the Leprechaun is covering all 3 points. And this was a really cool design. Shout out to Fighting Irish Media. Personally, I like it a lot. I think it keeps the tradition alive, but gives football its own identity. And I'm curious to see how it's used on gear and uniforms. And I've seen like a bunch of national outlets getting this wrong because they're acting like the Leprechaun has changed for all sports. That is not the case. We were told that the other sport-specific versions are coming soon, and I'm all for that as long as they look as good as this one. A little bit interested to see what he does with the basketball. Like, is he going to be dribbling it? Are they going to try to make him shoot it? I don't know. I guess we're going to find out here pretty soon. But I like the new logo, and I think, in this day and age when everyone hates everything, especially on the internet, the reaction that I have seen, outside of the people just completely misinterpreting the announcement and thinking that that's the logo for everything, most people seem to like it. So I think that's a huge win for Fighting Irish media and definitely a risk when you change up something like that, something that's been around for a really long time. Normally, people these days are just inclined to hate it. I don't know why, because they don't like change. But for once, people seem to really like the logo, and I am one of them. All right, now let's shift to the top 5 players who made the biggest move during preseason camp. And at number 1, I've got quarterback CJ Carr, because we just have not talked about quarterbacks enough on the show this week. It has been a fan favorite topic. It has generated a lot of reaction ever since Notre Dame announced that CJ Carr was going to be the starting quarterback over Kenny Minchey. But how could you not put CJ Carr number 1? He won the most important position battle in camp, and now he is the starting quarterback when Notre Dame heads to Miami to take on the Hurricanes. Most people, myself included, expected him to win the job going in, and he delivered. Although it was a little bit of a roller coaster ride during those first 2.5 weeks, ultimately he won the job. He was not perfect, but he did enough to win it, and that is the most important thing. The result of this battle is likely going to define Notre Dame's season in 2025, so that's why he tops the list. And I know that we've had different discussions about how well he practiced, what was he doing right, what was he doing wrong. Well, we know that he was a little interception prone throughout the past couple weeks, but he's also been making some really impressive throws, and the throws that make the coaching staff think about his ceiling and how close he is to reaching that. And if he figures it out, if he's able to limit those turnovers, limit mistakes, and if he plays anywhere near his potential, this Notre Dame offense is going to soar this season. He's definitely going to make some mistakes, as all young quarterbacks do, but the coaching staff is looking at him and they see the future of this football program. He's young. He has practically zero experience playing at the college level, but we've been hearing about CJ Carr and his elite arm talent since he was in high school. I remember when he committed to Notre Dame before his junior season, and a lot of people were wondering if he would consider enrolling early, reclassifying, skipping out on a senior high school football season, because Notre Dame was struggling to get a quarterback commit in that cycle, that class of 2023. They ended up getting Kenny Minchey, but ultimately in the end, CJ Carr ends up winning the job over Kenny Minchey, and Notre Dame is putting all their chips on CJ Carr. We're going to see how he plays during the season opener and then Texas A&M after that. Like I said, I expect some bumps along the way, but long term, I do expect CJ Carr to find his rhythm and then end up being a really, really talented quarterback for Notre Dame. Because if he does reach his ceiling or plays anywhere close to it, I think he's going to go down as one of the best quarterbacks in school history. But there's a lot of time, a lot of work he has to put in to get to that point. Hopefully Notre Dame sees at least some of that early on, and if he does show out, I think Notre Dame has a pretty good chance of starting the season 2-0. All right, coming up, one guy battled an injury all summer and still won a starting job, and the other has quietly become one of the most important players on the Notre Dame defense. It's coming up next. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before Week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. If you want to pick an MVP, I personally am taking Patrick Mahomes. You can get him at plus 650 right now on FanDuel. He has the 4th best odds, but I think he's going to go out there and have a revenge season after things went off the rails in the Super Bowl. Speaking of, I'm taking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. I know it's kind of a boring pick, but they're plus 850 right now, and until someone knocks them out in the AFC, they're going to be back in the big game, and I like their chances at plus 850. You can also parlay your division winner dark horses, so just visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, checking in at number 2 on my top 5 list of the players who made the biggest moves during preseason camp, I have got right guard Gerby Lambert. Gerby started camp with injury questions, and he ends camp as the starting right guard. At this time, Notre Dame has not come out and made an official announcement about who is going to be starting a right guard, but our guy Tim Priester from Irish Illustrated reported that Gerby Lambert has won the job over Sullivan Absher, and this is big time, because Gerby is one of the most physically gifted linemen in that room. He was a top 50 prospect when he was coming out of high school, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, and he's massive. He's 6'7", 335 pounds, and as a redshirt freshman, he has already proven that he's one of the 5 best offensive linemen on this team. And it was not an easy transition for him. Is a traditional tackle. That's what he played last year as a true freshman. He got some spot duty when Notre Dame was blowing out teams, and then he had to go over to guard and beat out Sullivan Absher, who got the first crack at the position. And I know that the coaching staff thinks really, really highly of Sullivan Absher. So the fact that Gerby Lambert was able to move over to a position that he's not played before and then beat out a really talented lineman in Sullivan Absher shows you the kind of move that he made during preseason camp. It shows trust from the coaching staff as well, and his versatility as a long-term offensive line piece, because Joe Rudolph, the offensive line coach, is all about putting his 5 best linemen on the field, and Lambert is clearly in that top 5. Some people have even made the claim that he might already be one of the top 3 linemen, but I want to see how he looks on Saturdays before I'm ready to make that claim. I still think his long-term future is at tackle, but let's see how he fares at right guard. If he comes in, he goes out there and he delivers right away, Notre Dame is going to have to make some tough decisions down the road once Charles Jagsaw is back and he's recovered from his arm injury, but they will cross that bridge when they get there. For now, it's about getting those 5 best out there. Clearly, Lambert is one of those, and I think that he has a great opportunity to just solidify his place on this offensive line and never come off the field. He honestly might have been on track to compete with Anthony Knapp for that starting left tackle spot had he not suffered that shoulder injury during spring practice, and that is what makes this so impressive. He misses about the entire second half of spring practice, has to spend the entire summer recovering from labrum surgery. Then he's ready to go at the start of fall camp, which I honestly was a little bit surprised at. I thought, they'd probably have to ease him back into the lineup, back into practice, all that stuff. Nope. He came out there on day 1, was ready to go, looked like one of the best offensive linemen right away. And then they realized, looking at the offensive line, the best path for him to get on the field was at right guard. Because by that point, Knapp looks solid at left tackle. Billy Schroth is going to be at left guard, Ashton Craig at center, and Emil Wagner at right tackle. So there was really only one spot in the offensive line where he had a chance to usurp someone. And even though Absher was given the first crack at it because he's been considered the 6th offensive lineman for a long time, that's what was the case when Charles Jagsaw went down. And then he seemed like the obvious candidate to fill in. That's who I thought would win the job. Nope. Gerby Lambert went out there and he won that job. And before we move on, I just want to say, I do feel bad for Sullivan Absher because he came back, he could have transferred, but he really wanted to be a part of this starting unit. It did not work out for him yet, but I feel confident that Sullivan Absher is going to be counted on at some point this season. It is a long season. Injuries happen. We saw it last year when it felt like offensive linemen were just dropping like flies during that Purdue game when Billy Schroth went down and Ashton Craig went down, and then Anthony Knapp ended going down in the college football playoff semifinal game. So injuries are going to happen, especially if Notre Dame plays as long as they hope to, and Sullivan Absher is going to be needed. So it's a really good thing for Notre Dame that they have a guy like Gerby Lambert who can beat out Sullivan Absher, who is also a very talented piece. And I would venture to say that Sullivan Absher is the first offensive lineman off the bench at every single position, which is very rare. There are not that many offensive linemen that have that kind of versatility, but Absher has played tackle in college. He's played guard, and he worked at center during spring practice while Ashton Craig was recovering from his knee surgery. So even though Sullivan Absher is not a part of the starting lineup today, I do think he's going to have a big role for the Irish at some point this season. All right, moving on to number 3. I've got defensive tackle Jason Onye. Onye built on a strong spring and dominated in fall camp. And look, if you've been watching or listening to the show throughout the offseason, you know that I've been pretty skeptical about whether or not Onye could be relied upon as a starter, but he has impressed the coaches, and now I am all in on Jason Onye. There was a point during probably January where I didn't think Jason Onye would ever suit up in the blue and gold again in a practice, let alone a game, because as we all know, he left the team in the middle of the season last year due to personal reasons, came back, joined the team during winter conditioning, went out there during spring, and was really impressive. He had put on weight. I wondered if it was good weight. Well, now it looks pretty good. He's 6'5", 302, and it looks like he's got 8% body fat. So he is a dude, and he is playing like a dude for Notre Dame on the interior of that defensive line. And the coaching staff has had nothing but extremely high praise for Jason Onye. This is what Marcus Freeman had to say in his press conference on Sunday. Quote, "Onye's had as good of a camp as I've seen in my 4 years here. He is just a reminder of development. Not everybody's going to come in here and be an All-American as a freshman. If you believe in them and work with them, they can develop into something really good." And then you have this quote from Chris Ash, the defensive coordinator. "When I first got here, I met with every defensive player individually, and I didn't know Jason's story. I didn't know the history of Jason and what he's gone through, and he told me right away. I was really impressed that he was willing to open up and tell me what he's gone through to get back to where he is right now." So clearly, Jason Onye is in a great place mentally, and he is ready to go. He was honestly coming onto the scene last year when he's playing really well in September, and I think if he picks up right where he left off and he's able to elevate his game, the defensive tackle spot might not be a concern. And I've been saying since January, that is my biggest question mark about the defense. Obviously, the quarterback battle was the biggest question for the entire team in the offseason, but the defensive tackle spot has been a question mark ever since Howard Cross and Riley Mills went to the NFL. And if Jason Onye is not only winning the job, but doing it as decisively as he has, that makes me feel a lot better about the position. He's got game experience. He's appeared in 19 games for his career, has 15 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. He's also a force on special teams. He's had a few blocked kicks during his time. And he also beat out Gabe Rubio. And that is really important because going into camp, if you had asked me which defensive tackle are you most confident in, I would have said Gabriel Rubio. And a big reason why is because he performed really well on the biggest stage last season when he had to fill in for Riley Mills once Mills went down with that torn ACL injury against Indiana. So you have a guy like Gabe Rubio who has started and played well in the college football playoff, comes back to the team this year, and Jason Onye just flat out beat him out. I don't even think it was particularly close. Now, granted, Gabriel Rubio was banged up for a little bit during fall camp, but I honestly don't think it would have mattered. Jason Onye went out there, he won the job, and that is huge for this Notre Dame defense. I hope he goes out, and I hope he absolutely dominates this year. It would be an incredible comeback story that everyone could rally behind, and it would be absolutely vital for this team. Because when you look at the Notre Dame defense, they are elite in the secondary with guys like Leonard Moore and Adon Schuler. And you've also got Devontae Smith coming over from Alabama and some really talented safeties next to Schuler. Christian Gregg could take a next step this year. You know that's an elite group. At linebacker, they have 4 starters playing for 2 spots with Drake Bowen, Jalen Sneed, Kingston Viliamu-Asa, and Jane Osprey. So that group is one of the best in the country. On the edges, Bryce Young, Boubacar Traore, they could be future first-round picks in the NFL draft. And then you've got guys like Junior Tuialamaka, Josh Burnham, really talented players who are ready to step up. They could go 6 deep once Jordan Battel comes back from injury. So the biggest question has always been, what can Notre Dame get on the defensive tackle or from the defensive tackle spot? And it looks like Jason Onye is about to answer that question and then some. All right, we've got a couple more names left on my top 5 list, including a transfer who didn't practice at all in the spring, but is going to be a fixture on this Notre Dame defense, and a freshman running back that nobody saw coming. That's coming up next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it is time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's Rugiet.com, RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. All right, coming in at number 4 on my list of the top 5 players who made the biggest moves during preseason camp, I've got safety, Jalen Stroman. Stroman is a very interesting player on this Notre Dame team because he transferred over from Virginia Tech and basically didn't play at all during the 2024 season. He went out there for the Hokies in the season opener against Vanderbilt, left that game with a severe shoulder injury, missed the rest of the season, and then missed all of spring practice after he recovered from a cleanup surgery. So he really had to show out in camp because Luke Talich and Tate Johnson were making moves during spring practice. And if Jalen Stroman was going to be able to utilize this last season of college football for his career, if he's going to make it to the NFL, he had to ball out, and it started in fall camp. Now, I think he's going to be the expected starter next to Adon Schuler. They're definitely going to rotate, and I don't know if he's going to start there all season long because Tate Johnson is right there behind him, and Luke Talich has been really strong as well. But Jalen Stroman is a veteran, he's steady, and he's been highly productive throughout his career. He's racked up 112 total tackles, 5 pass deflections, and 2 forced fumbles. He's not the ball hawk like a Tay Johnson, but I think he's the perfect complement to Adon Schuler in the back end, especially to start off the year, because the coaching staff can trust him to get everywhere where they need to be so that everyone else can play fast and they can play free. And I don't think Jalen Stroman is going to be fazed by playing in a place as hostile as Hard Rock Stadium is going to be on August 31st. I honestly was not sure how he would do in camp, considering it had been so long since he played meaningful football. And then you got Tay Johnson going out there in the very first practice, picking off CJ Carr twice, including one play that might be one of the best plays throughout camp when he just went up there and then plucked the ball out of the air. But then Jalen Stroman continued to stack days after days, and then he has asserted himself as one of the best players on this defense. And I expect him to start against Miami, and I think that he's going to be a really good player for this Notre Dame defense. He is a very physical safety. He is going to get in there. He's going to tackle you. He's going to make sure you feel it. And this is going to be the identity of the Notre Dame defense. They're going to be a very violent group. They're going to cause chaos. They're going to be rowdy. And you know what? They're probably going to talk a little bit of trash as well. And I think Jalen Stroman is a perfect fit. And I've been telling people this throughout the offseason. If Jalen Stroman had gone out there and he had played the full season last year with the Hokies, I know that was a pretty terrible football team, but he was one of the best players on the entire team. In preseason mock drafts, he was a day 2 or day 3 pick. Well, now he has a chance to make himself some money this season in his last year of college football. And I think he's going to take advantage of this opportunity because he understands what's at stake. And I think he's going to be a vital piece to this Notre Dame defense. All right, coming in at number 5 on the list, I've got running back Nolan James Jr. If you've been watching or listening to the show the past few weeks, you know how much I love Nolan James Jr. But if you had told me in like July that Nolan James Jr. would have any shot of playing this year, I would have said, there is no way. Not in a running back room that has Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price or a guy like Jabron Payne, who's been there, who's done that. A guy like Aeneas Williams, who last year was getting some significant playing time during the college football playoff as a true freshman. He's even on the Doak Walker Award preseason watch list. I know I've brought that up a few times, but that just crazy to me that Notre Dame has 3 running backs who are up for the best running back in the award in the country. And then you've got Nolan James Jr., a true freshman, who very well deserves some carries. I think he could maybe still get redshirted depending on what happens with Aeneas Williams, but keep an eye out for Nolan James Jr. I think the injuries to Kedron Young and Aeneas Williams opened up the door for Nolan James Jr., and he kicked it down. He beat out Jabron Payne, and Jabron Payne is going into a senior season, and I think what Mike Denbrock said really tells you how confident the coaching staff is in Nolan James. This is what Mike Denbrock had to say. Quote, Nolan James has come in and put himself in a position to get on the football field. I mean, he is very competitive. He's very skilled. He's in a loaded room full of very good players as well, but he's a good football player himself. Just think about how much talent is in that running back room and how hard it would be for a true freshman to impress when you're running along guys like Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Well, that is exactly what Nolan James did. I don't expect to see him a ton against Miami because, as Dylan McCullough, the former running backs coach, said, it would be coaching malpractice to put a true freshman out there in that kind of environment, but he's going to play at some point this year. And they could still play him for a few games and ultimately redshirt him, but if he is as good as I think he is, that redshirt's not going to matter because he's not going to be playing football, or he's not going to be playing college football, I should say, for 5 seasons. So I think you're going to see him a lot more than any of us expected going into camp, and it's because he can do a bunch of different things for this offense. He's not afraid to pass block, which is pretty rare for a true freshman running back. He can go out there and catch the ball out of the backfield. He had 3 catches for 60 yards in the spring game, and he knows how to grind out those extra yards when he's running with the rock. Some people have called him a bigger Kyron Williams, which is extremely high praise, but for him to be in this position and draw that comparison shows you the type of player that he is today and the type of player that he can be in the future. So very excited about Nolan James's future at Notre Dame. Again, I don't know what his role is going to be like this year. I don't even think the coaching staff has fully figured it out. I think they're waiting to see what happens with Aeneas Williams because he has suffered an elbow injury during camp. And then he had to get back out there, but because he saw how quickly Nolan James was making a move at that running back position, and I think Aeneas Williams re-aggravated that injury during the Jersey scrimmage, so there's a real opportunity for Nolan James Jr. to make some plays. I'm certainly not writing off Aeneas Williams. I think once he's healthy, he's going to be a big-time contributor on this team as well, but keep an eye out for him, and that is not something I thought I'd be saying at this point in time. All right, some honorable mentions here before we wrap it up. So I've got Eli Raridon, which doesn't really feel like it makes sense with all the other guys I just mentioned because Eli Raridon was always going to be the starting tight end, right? But his ascension into becoming one of the best tight ends in the country just is something that started in spring ball, and he has continued that. And Mike Denbrock doubled down this past week. He called him elite once again. He says he's going to be the next great Notre Dame tight end. He's fully healthy. He's moving around like a future NFL tight end, and this Notre Dame offense is going to absolutely need him to come up big, especially with a young and experienced quarterback. You need a tight end that you can rely on. I think Eli Raridon is exactly that. So I don't think he made a move in the sense of like, he's in the exact same spot on the depth chart, but I think he made a move relative to the other tight ends in the country. I hope Eli Raridon is able to stay healthy all year because he could end up being one of the best players on this entire team. Another veteran player who makes the list here in the honorable mentions, Will Pauling, who was not a full participant in spring practice. He was also recovering from an injury, but he was out there doing what he could, and then he took his game to another level in camp. He has been looking like the 2023 version of himself when he had over 800 receiving yards, over 70 receptions, and Pro Football Focus labeled him as the best slot receiver in the Big Ten. And Notre Dame already has a really good slot receiver in Jaden Greathouse, but you heard Pete Sampson from The Athletic come on the show this week, and he was talking about the coaching staff's message to Jaden Greathouse. Like, hey, man, you better come ready to play every single day because Will Pauling is here, and he is prepared to take reps away because he's a guy that it's going to be very difficult to take off the field. Then he was elected captain. The first time a non-quarterback transfer was elected captain. That shows you the way that his teammates view him. That is extremely impressive. Another captain, Donovan Hinish, makes the list as well. We know he's got a great motor, but he earned a starting role on this defense. Again, pretty decisively, kind of similar to Jason Onye. In spring, I thought it'd be Gabriel Rubio and Jared Dawson as the starting defensive tackles. As we sit here today, it's going to be Jason Onye and Donovan Hinish. I don't even think it was particularly close. And I understand that Donovan Hinish is a little bit undersized for his position, but he also came up with the biggest sack of the season last year, or one of the biggest sacks this season, when he sacked Gunnar Stockton to basically ice the game against Georgia. He is a very talented pass rusher. He is going to be a big-time player for the Irish this season, and I think he cemented that with his play during preseason camp. Next up, Tate Johnson, a guy who I've already talked about quite a bit on this show. He's definitely going to rotate at safety. Maybe later on in the year, he ends up earning a starting job, but he flashed in spring. He continued to flash in fall, made some of the best plays in camp. I think he's still working to earn the trust of the coaching staff so that he understands to play within the defense and he's not going out there to make all kinds of plays by himself. We know he's capable of doing it when the opportunity presents itself, but he has to make sure that he plays assignment sound football. But when he's out there and he has a chance to make a play, Tate Johnson is going to do it. And then the last player on the honorable mention, wide receiver Logan Saldate. He's not going to play in 2025. At least I don't think he will. Certainly not in a major role. But his stock is way up for 2026. Once Will Pauling is gone, and if Jaden Greathouse sticks around, I think he's going to be rotating with Logan Saldate in the slot. He was not a super highly rated recruit. Notre Dame was able to flip him from Oregon State, but I think he's a big-time player, man. Not the biggest wide receiver in the world, but he can jump out of the gym. He's extremely quick, and he's going to be a player for the Irish next fall. He's going to have to sit out this year, wait his turn behind a bunch of veteran receivers in front of him. But like I said earlier this week, I'm buying all the stock in Logan Saldate. So there you have it. There is my list of the top 5 players who made the biggest moves during preseason camp. Quarterback CJ Carr at 1, right guard Kirby Lambert at 2, 3, defensive tackle Jason Onye, 4, safety Jalen Stroman, and then at number 5, running back Nolan James Jr. All right, that's going to do it for me today, and that's going to do it for the 2025 offseason on Locked on Irish. Thank you again for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Thank you for tuning in all week on the show, and thank you especially to those of you who have been with us since the cold winter months. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your support and how excited I am to start talking about real live football soon. Before we get on with your weekend, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow along wherever you get your podcasts. I'm going to be back on Monday morning with Luke Smith for our annual preseason award show. It is always one of my favorite episodes of the year, so you are not going to want to miss that. And by then, it's officially game week. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll see you Monday.